guess this is a test podcast, I guess you could say, for Unearthly Upstate.
Take one.
Take one. I'm Mari Manette. And
I'm Matthew Manette.
And we're going to, I guess, explain why we're going to do a podcast called Unearthly Upstate.
Yes.
And maybe a little background on why we even decided to do a podcast is, thanks to a class. I had to come up with creative ways of utilizing internet and social media integration, and I was going to do a video interview with Matt about his reenactment and his living history volunteering he does, and things got messed up. We couldn't get the videos to work. Recording was going to be impossible, and I had a day to get this done, so I looked into making a podcast, and it turned out to be easier than I thought. So we decided, hey, this is kind of fun. Let's make a podcast. So we're going to make a podcast. Kind of fun. Mm-hmm. Going to make a podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
So we decided on an interesting format. It's not an original format, I'm going to admit, but it's an interesting one. We basically are both history buffs, both amateur historians. I was a had history minor in college.
I had 4 of them.
Yeah, you had four minors.
Yeah, right.
One was history.
I was taking 2 majors at the time. So.
Yeah. So we both love history, and when Matt doing living history is pretty obvious. And we live in upstate New York. And we're not originally upstate New Yorkers, but we do love the state.
We've been adopted.
Basically. And if you're a history buff, there is a lot of history in upstate.
There is a tremendous amount of history here in New York State. And
I think some of the best, every place we've ever been, we've always found something interesting. I have a weird, niche when it comes to history. If you're familiar with the children's series Horrible Histories, that kind of describes how I view history. I'm not someone who can sit there and recite dates and times and tell you who did what in that time. But if you ask me a question about, Edward Teach, I would say, oh yeah, he killed his first mate just for the hell of it. It's those weird little facts that I remember.
He shot him, but did he actually kill him?
He shot him. Yeah, he shot him. But it was just for the hell of it. It really was. There was no rhyme or reason, I guess. But that's the type of history I like. I like having these little tidbits.
Edward Teach was one of those people who got easily bored.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we're not going to. I don't think we'll be talking about too many pirates. In our upcoming
not
podcast.
Too many pirates. But that's where the history of the coast is. But we're not going to settle. We're not going to center in on the city a whole lot, because a lot of other people got that angle covered.
Oh yeah, Long Island and New York City, that whole area down there. Sorry, you're not going to get covered. We will be visiting, but we're not.
Well, clue in the name, Unearthly Upstate.
Upstate. Okay, well maybe we should. Okay. We do have a declaration of what Unearthly Upstate is, and I'm going to read it.
Yeah.
Okay, so Unearthly Upstate looks at the tales and legends of people, places in upstate New York. We will tell you the folklore, but then explain the history. And sometimes the history is interesting, sometimes it's non-existent, and sometimes it's more disturbing than the tales told.
Yes,
there is one coming up where I almost didn't want to do the show because I'm a person who tries to find as much first person source.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
and I found
usually the best.
Yeah, and I found a plethora in this particular episode of first person, and it happens to be a true crime one. And there was a lot of police reports, and of course autopsy reports, and
that gives you a clue as to what kind of thing it was.
Yeah, and I will say I was about 3 days into researching it, and I really was having second thoughts of even doing the episode. Because there was stuff that I uncovered that is not going to make it to the episode, but it is very disturbing. Yeah. But that's part of history too. And if I'm into learning, liking that weird part of history, yeah, sometimes I'm going to hit stuff that makes me even go, oh,
and if any of this whets your appetite for more, you can take what little knowledge we've given you and go a long way.
Yeah. And why we're doing the folk tales and why we're doing the urban legends is there's some really cool ones around.
Yeah, there is.
And sometimes, like I said, you start looking into them, and then you start looking into the history, and then you find stuff that's even cooler than the legend. So like every theater we've been, like the Syracuse, and Syracuse and Rome and Utica, their main theaters, their historic theaters, all are haunted. But I think that's par for the course with any theater. I think even the little community college, well, it wasn't community college, the 2-year college we met at, which was a fairly new building, I think you would swear that theater was haunted too. So, it's par for the course. But some of these theaters, you research it a bit, and you might find something really interesting in the history.
It wasn't even constructed correctly, really.
Oh, yeah, though. What are you talking about?
Terrible acoustics.
Talking about Barron County.
Yeah, right? Barron County's theater, oh my goodness sake.
Yeah, we might as well mention, we were originally from Wisconsin, but we're settling here.
For the last, how many years has it been? Since 2005.
2005, yeah. So 14 years. But anyway, so sometimes you'll hear us make references to Wisconsin. But
So we've been here long enough, to soak up a lot of what's here.
And where we lived were some very historical places. We started in Syracuse, and we lived in Rome, and now we're living between Syracuse and Oswego. In Fulton. And there's a lot of history in these areas. Revolutionary War history, French and Indian War, Civil War, 1812,
Civil War,
the canals,
Canals have a lot of history.
Oh yeah, a lot of industrial history. So it's around here. I mean, you don't have to go any further. I mean, I think there's a historical marker less than a mile from our house, for example.
There are a lot of historical markers. If you don't actually find an existing site, you will find usually a historical marker somewhere around the spot.
Yeah, and there's some really doozies in New York. But,
for sure.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the first season, we've got some interesting things planned. Let's go back and define the upstate part. Defining upstate New York, that is very interesting. I mean, when we first moved here, we were in central New York, so we knew pretty darn well we were in upstate.
But no one can really agree where that begins.
But when you say something stupid like, it begins in Albany, there are people that live south of Albany who take offense with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they want to be upstate. They don't want to be downstate. And I came up with my personal definition, which is if you can take public transportation, and I'm not talking Amtrak or Greyhound, I'm talking like public transportation, and make it to the New York City.
If you can take a city bus into New York from where you're
or
at,
train,
outside, then you're really not.
Then you're not in upstate.
No.
And like I said, there's a couple things we're going to be looking at that are kind of on the border of that definition. But the places are interesting enough that I'm willing to bend it a little bit. But like I said, nobody really has a good definition what upstate is.
Yeah, if you're inside the 14th district, you're not in
upstate. And I'm not covering Long Island just because it's on the other side of the city, and I think somebody from Long Island would do a better job. There's some crazy stuff in Long Island, but
plenty of people have got that angle covered already.
Exactly.
Along with cryptids too. Although we will be mentioning cryptids.
We will be mentioning cryptids, but I gotta admit, there's 3 guys that live south of us, about 30 minutes to 45 minutes south.
Where
of
are they,
us.
Like Orange County?
No, they live in Auburn. Auburn. We're talking about the Cryptonauts, and they do an awesome
name dropping.
Part of the influence why we went into podcasting, we just got addicted to listening to those guys. But we are going to mention a few cryptids, a couple. But I'm trying to keep the cryptids not so much. Here's the latest sighting, but keep it in the historical contents, which is going to be a little tough with some of them, but in others it's going to be really interesting, because I've been looking through these old newspapers, and there's some wild stories in these old newspapers.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are going to be talking about ghosts. We are going to be talking about curses. We are going to be talking about the urban legends. But are we going to go hunting for ghosts?
No.
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 No, we're not going to. Again, other people have got that covered.
Other people got that covered. And I'm sorry, tools like the spirit box annoy the hell out of me. So
it's just a frequency scanner, honestly.
Yeah.
It just is. And Appletator. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Don't even whip it out. You're going to immediately lose respect from us if you whip out your spirit box.
And I could go my whole rant about EVP is just like backwards masking hysteria. But those are the reasons we won't go on ghost hunts. And I'm not degrading anybody who does that, because a lot of groups do work with some of these sites we're going to be talking about, and they do a lot to help promote some of these historical sites. So I'm not degrading the groups. It's just some of the tools that are used annoy me. And I think some people may agree with this. Even other ghost hunters may agree with this. The ghost hunters who are very popular on TV are actually harming real research into paranormal.
I remember a time when I was at Stanwix and we had some of those guys come through, some of those ghost facers guy types.
Yeah.
And they were, they weren't there to record, so they didn't have to get any written permission or anything, but they did bring some of their tools with them. And one of them was a stud finder, honestly. That was... boy.
I mean, there's a difference between somebody like one of my favorite guys from England's Chris Hulton. He does ghost hunting like old school style, and kind of was an inspiration for us too. Here's the history of the place. Here are the legends of the place. How are they related?
Oh, that former detective?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
he's interesting.
He is interesting. And that's how I like it. He has a lot of respect for the place he's going. You're never going to hear him go, "Oh, what's that? Oh, I'm sorry." I'm sorry. It's a recording. Oh my God.
Little spousal abuse here on Earthly Upstate.
I'm so sorry.
But it's going to leave a bruise.
I just got a little carried away. But no, there's none of that jumping around going, "Oh my God, did you hear that? Oh my God, did you? Oh. No. God, if you're that, jumpy, don't go ghost hunting. I'm sorry.
That weird guy with the white hair and the black mustache.
He's the reason I stopped watching it on
God.
TV, because he was bad. And I don't even remember his name. But anyway, we went off on a little side rant.
Yeah, that's for sure. But that's the beauty of the podcast.
That's the reason we won't do ghost hunting ourselves. Now, we have looked at joining ghost hunts and ghost walks for some of these places. We went on a ghost walk. Oh God, must have been. Well, it was. We were still living in Syracuse.
Ghost walks are more interesting.
And that I learned so much about the history of Syracuse. It was very well done. Really enjoyed it and learned about stuff that we didn't even knew about Syracuse. And that's what we're kind of hoping to do here too. We're going to reel you in with the legend, but then hopefully you walk away learning something a little different. Now, I gotta say, do I believe in ghosts? I will say there's a possibility, but I want you to...
I don't.
I need every possible explanation to be taken off the table before I'll go, okay, it's a ghost. And that includes CO2. That includes... a lot of psychological things.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I have to say that,
once you eliminate insanity and the presence of CO2 in the air, then you probably...
Well, not insanity. No, just something about your mind. Your mind always looks for patterns, and it could be a sound, it could be,
that's true.
So if you take all that away and you still can't explain what's going on, okay, then I'll lean towards it's a ghost. But there's a lot of rational explanation that will take away. Does it diminish the story for me? No, I think it's far more interesting.
That's true what you say about the mind.
Yeah,
the mind always struggles to put things into a pattern. Even when you're looking at the grain in a panel of wood, and you'll see faces. And when you hear, you think you're hearing voices. but it turns out to be water, trickling through a drain. That sort of thing. Your mind is always looking to piece those kind of things together, what it doesn't understand, into a coherent picture, whether it's auditory or visual. And that's where people, I think, see ghosts.
Yeah, but does it? I don't think it diminishes the stories that get told. I mean, every old house is going to have creaks and moans, and you might see shadows where you don't expect it. And if you know a bit that somebody important passed away here, or that there's always been tales, your mind's going to go there.
Exactly.
But I don't think it diminishes it. I don't think telling ghost stories, especially in a historical context, I don't think that's a bad thing. No. I'm not the type of person, so you got to be totally logical about this and just speak about the history. Hey, you know what? If it gets people interested in coming and checking out something, and they learn something from it, go ahead. Keep up with the stories. Keep it up. And I would, there's been cases where, as I've been doing this research, where we find out somebody makes up a ghost story to promote their place, but they have no background for that ghost story.
Or the timeline's wrong. Or something.
Believe me, it's sniffed out pretty fast. People can, they like a good story, but they like a good plausible story.
Exactly right.
And those places usually have to drop the
ghost. It has to be grounded in something.
Yeah.
Talking of such, over at Stanwix, when I spent my 6 consecutive years over there, my 6 consecutive seasons, I'll be in my 7th. I'll be spending my 7th season with parks up in Oswego, for Fort Ontario, of course. But Stanwix isn't even in the original spot.
No.
But then you get ghost hunters in there and say, they've got some kind of evidence.
But here's the thing: is it a Revolutionary War soldier? Is it somebody from the Revolutionary War, or is it somebody from the 1800s and the early 1900s? When Rome was there, when the city of Rome was there. The ghosts that are constantly supposedly seen at Stanwix are very interesting. And I'm sorry, folks, George Washington is not one of them.
Exactly.
George Washington was never at Fort Stanwix.
He was never visited. He never even visited.
Benedict Arnold came closer.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
I mean, he came within a few miles of Stanwix.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the one-legged man.
Yeah, there you go. You left the better part of him in Saratoga.
Yeah.
As far as the Patriots are concerned. Anyway, but they do have an original hearth from the fort.
Yeah, I mean,
that's in the north. It's sealed away in the northwest bastion. You can go visit it.
If you go on the archaeological tour, look at all the stuff they found while they were doing the survey. And they're still finding.
They're still discovering.
Oh my God, that first year I volunteered there, I'm volunteering in Willett Center, and the poor grounds crew have to figure out how to bring this cannon in that was found in somebody's yard.
Didn't a farmer plow it up?
Years ago, and the family kept it.
Oh, okay.
But then they were going to sell the house or get rid of it, so they donated it. Yeah, they donated it to the fort.
An old cannon tube.
But it was an old cannon tube, and it was so interesting. My first year there, they bring it in, and then they got to put it kind of in a quarantine area.
That's what we call a barrel.
And they had to catch the bugs because that could help them with some of the research, and then I think the following year, they're finally getting around to cleaning it up and doing a survey on it. Yeah. But it was so interesting. Here's a cannon that was found nowhere close to the site, but probably, I don't know if I remember right, if it was found on the British lines or maybe it was found on...
It was a British gun.
It was a British gun. Mm-hmm. But
because it had
the
royal stamp on it.
But you see, that's what goes on along that fort all the time. Well, there's so many forts in Rome.
Well, the colonials captured British guns and used them.
Yeah, so
you find a lot of British equipment in colonial possession and use during the American Revolution.
But people literally will be digging their sewer backs up or something, and then go in over the back home. Oh, here's a cannonball. Yeah, so. That's how close history is. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we went out by the canal in Fulton one of these days, took a walk on and found something. Right. I mean, it's interesting. History is just everywhere around here. Speaking of which, will we ever visit some of these places? Well, obviously we've been to Stanwix.
The 13 Curves.
Been to 13 Curves. We've, of course, Stuyven's Memorial. We've been there a few times.
Or Steuben.
Stuyven.
You'll have a lot of arguments about that with people you meet.
And then, of course, Fort Ontario. I work at SUNY Oswego myself, and that's got an interesting history behind it as well. We have visited a lot of these places. We went to Saratoga. We saw Schuyler's home, one of his homesteads, and so we have been to these places. But the problem is, we would like to go to more, but we've got real life and money issues. So
don't count places like Erie Canal Village. Those places were set up as tourist traps. Well,
no, Erie Canal Village in this heyday did do a lot of education, but right now it's God knows what's going to happen to it.
It's in ruins.
I really hope it gets turned around, but because the Erie Canal, amazing history of the Erie Canal.
Definitely.
In Syracuse, Salt Museum, Erie Canal Museum.
Salt Museum is interesting.
So we have visited a lot of these places. We would like to visit more. I think I have a bucket list that's almost long. It's longer than the episodes that we planned. Put this way, I have leads on enough episodes to keep this podcast going 5 years. Even if we have no listeners, we're going to do it.
All right.
So
what's next on the explanation?
Well, for people who don't understand how interesting Upstate is.
Yeah.
Well, right. I have some things to consider. You got to consider how big New York is. And we live in north central New York. And, let's just give an example. We have the Adirondacks, we have the Catskills, we have the Allegheny, the Finger Lakes, the Mohawk Valley, and the Thousand Islands. Those are just some of the regions.
Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, Hudson River, Lake Champlain, Erie Canal, St. Lawrence Seaway.
Yep. And, those are just places, general places that are really have not just important to New York, but like St. Lawrence Seaway, Erie Canal. The Great Lakes that surround it are very important to U.S. history as well. Yeah. And then talk about items that were started in New York. And some of these surprised me, finding out, that if you go to Leroy, New York, there's a Jell-O museum. Why? Because that's where Jell-O was invented.
Yep. One Night of Silverware.
Yep. Started by that Night of Silverware, started by the Utopian Society. That was the way they made money.
Syracuse, China.
Yep. Beech nut foods, baby food. Corning glass, big thing. And then the newest one. Chobani yogurt. Yeah, that's one of the newer ones. And of course, we got a lot of microbreweries. We got a lot of wineries up here, not just from Finger Lakes, but the Thousand Island area.
If you drive around the area, during the summer, you find a lot of hops being grown.
If we ever want to do a secondary podcast, it would just be on the food of New York. I mean, unique food. I mean, people who know us from Wisconsin have probably never heard of Riggies.
Right. Exactly.
Salt potatoes, garbage plates.
Right.
Grape pie, which I still gotta try. Cornell chicken, which is amazing. By the way, I think I like that better than a tomato-based barbecue. Cornell chicken is amazing. Perfect. Here's a perfect picnic. Cornell chicken, salt potatoes, and then half moon cookies for dessert. Oh, that's the perfect picnic, okay? And Grandma's baked beans.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Grandma's baked beans, okay?
Yeah. So that all fits into Unearthly Upstate.
Yeah, maybe not the food so much. But
but hey.
Like I said, we could do a secondary one. Yeah.
It all ties in. If there's no actual literal connection, then, it's the backdrop for whatever is happening.
I shouldn't say the food won't tie in, because there's a couple places I have in my study, my lead list, that are diners, that are restaurants. So who knows? Maybe we will decide to go eat at one of these restaurants.
Isn't it the case? Like Bray Loch.
Bray Loch, yeah.
Yeah, it's got a ghost story behind it. You got to have, if you're going to run a bed and breakfast, you got to have a good ghost story to go along with it. My goodness sakes, you need a draw.
It's like, if you've got a lake, it has to have a lake monster. And we've got Champ, and we've got a few others too.
Yeah, although we won't although cryptids are
again
covered by a lot of other people,
better
they
than
will
us.
tie in.
Yes, yes. I mean, I can't talk about the Allegheny State Park without mentioning Hi-Hat.
Oh, yes, that's
and
right.
Hi-Hat, I guess, was the reason I kind of started going down this rabbit hole, and I discovered that interesting.
Isn't that kind of
story.
One of the original memes, sort of, before?
Well, okay, if
thermionics became a thing.
Here's the thing: if Hi-Hat had started, let's say 5 years ago, people would just say, "Oh, it's a creepypasta about a shadow man,"
right, exactly,
or a fedora man, as they call him.
Fedora man.
No,
man.
Hi-Hat is about 160 years prior to memes and prior to internet and prior to creepypasta. But he is a shadow creature. He's got a wicked sense of fashion, hence his name, Hi-Hat.
Hi-Hat, yes.
But apparently he's a cannibal. But he shows up when things are going really weird in Allegheny. And one of the stories that sticks out to me that I remember is they were building the dam there. And I can't remember what time it was. I want to say 1900s, early 1900s, maybe it was late 1800s. Okay. And the workers would constantly see this thing. But there you go. There's a cryptid that's tied into a history of an area.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And and then the Whitehall and Bigfoot.
It gives you an idea of how memes got started. These kind of things got, urban legends, rural legends, that sort of thing. And it's going to be the rural legends that we're going to be concentrating on, really.
I mean, there's a lot of ladies in whites I've ran into. There's a lot of haunted curves. There's a lot of, the children were massacred here. But there's no history. There's no real proof of them. They're still great stories. Stories.
Absolutely.
There's just down the road from us, there's a cemetery that supposedly there's a ghost child that runs through hiding behind the gravestones.
Oh yeah.
But how do you substitute? How do you figure out where's the history of that one? You really can't.
That's right here in full.
Yeah, you really can't. But it's still a great story. So I've been running into a lot of those too, and we might cover them in one. Take a bunch of those and talk about them. Well,
it's fair to say the older the place, the older the location, the longer it's been settled, the greater the chance there's going to be some kind of ghost story behind it.
Yeah.
And some kind of history along with it.
Yeah.
Behind the ghost.
And I'm not going to go for the explanation Native American curse unless it is a Native American telling me that story. Like Tana says in Letterkenny, stop watching those stupid horror movies.
Stupid
because, what turns me off as the quick explanation why there's some place that's haunted. Oh, it's a Native American curse. You ask them, well, which tribe? And they usually get the wrong one for the area.
One of my favorite cinematic freakouts comes at the end of Poltergeist. The father's confronting his boss. You just move the stones.
Yeah.
Lies.
Well, there are situations where that happens.
Yes.
I was listening to the Order of Good Death podcast, and they were talking about this African American cemetery where that did happen. They just moved the stones to move in the subdivision.
And left the
bodies, and people started reporting hauntings, and some of the hauntings was due to the ground settling because the caskets were now having all this pressure on them, and there was a logical explanation that led to the discovery of this cemetery.
Well, there are no bodies bursting out of the ground or anything like that, but I mean they.
Well, when one person had to do some work in their house and ran into a casket.
Right.
So, now you got ghost stories, and now you've got a casket, and they did a little research and found out that's what happened. This African American, cemetery. And here's the thing: people want that cemetery protected. They want it saved. People in the area, but the state where this happened, this didn't happen in New York. I forgot what state this was. Said that only family members can ask for that protection. Oh. Well, how do you find the family members? We got to find records of the cemetery. Where are the records of the cemetery? Oops, destroyed.
Yeah, there's no records.
So
how can you follow that?
Yeah, so people who want this cemetery protected for historical thing have no leg to stand on because the state law of this particular state kind of makes it difficult to do so. And so, you know, you can run into that all the time. I mean, there are little cemeteries everywhere.
They're set up to protect the rights of the family members who have their loved ones interred in that cemetery. There's no nefarious intent behind it originally. No. It just turns out that
it's being used for bureaucratic reasons. Okay.
Yeah.
And speaking of cemeteries, we passed like 4 or 5 of them just to take me to work. And a couple of them are tiny little things. And that's what makes this area interesting, just the amount of little cemeteries. I mean, you quite literally be driving down the road and then all of a sudden there's like 20 gravestones. And they're all protected and all taken care of.
Absolutely. Yeah, there'll be little private plots, different family plots, small community plots where there used to stand a church next to it, but then the church is no longer there. But you can't move the cemetery. You know, the cemetery stays where it is.
Yeah.
So, and there are all these roadside cemeteries.
And of course, some of these cemeteries get to the point where people forget why they're there, and then here come these legends again.
Yep, exactly.
And there are a few that popped up in my research, then my leads that they're
the cemeteries stay long after the site of the haunting is gone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So there's an interesting one, and then I guess I'm going to say, I think we're going to be talking about a lot of places you can visit. There's a couple that you really shouldn't visit, and one in particular in our first season. I'm using it as an example of what happens when people get too gung-ho about these legends and really don't think what they're doing to their what they're doing to the places when they go and do the legend tripping. Now, I know urban explorers. There's kind of like 2 schools of urban explorers. There's one school that goes in, records what they saw, doesn't touch anything, doesn't disturb anything, doesn't bother anything. They don't tag anything. They just go in and record because they find it interesting, and they leave. And then you have this second group of urban explorers who you usually won't find on YouTube because they don't want any recording of what they do, who go in and totally trash the place.
Yeah, they're not going to live stream their activities.
So I have nothing against urban explorers who go in and do it respectfully, who go in and, you know, they'll try to find a little bit about the history before they go in there. Go for it, guys and gals. I think you do a wonderful job. Just do it safely. I've watched too many of them go in. It's like, why aren't you wearing boots? Why aren't you wearing a gas mask if this place used to have chemicals in it? You know, where are your gloves?
I'd be in a full hazard suit. You know, the kind that the painters wear or the people who do forensics do with some kind of mask that would filter the air for asbestos and black mold.
And the ones that do it alone, oh my God.
And
go in with at least 3 other people.
Under the circumstances, it might be prudent to carry a small air pistol with you, just in case you run into some kind of vermin. You don't want to get close to that sort of thing. You know, you want to deal with it at a distance. And, of course, appropriate footwear and gloves. Yeah. Please.
Because
protect you. Do as much as you can to protect yourself. And a lot of these areas, they're only suitable for drones.
Yeah.
You can fly a little drone inside there and have a look with the camera there. I don't know why there aren't more urban spelunkers who don't do that sort of thing. I mean, if I
might lose
more
the
practice
signal
with my own drone,
you might lose the signal if it's a heavy rock building or concrete. You might lose the signal.
But I'm saying if there's a staircase that looks questionable and you need to get in there and see what's going on, there are models of drones that you can use that have a screen on the controller, and you can control the drone around it. And get a look at it safely. Urban spelunk.
Yeah.
But it's
again we got sidetracked.
Dangerous activity, urban spelunking.
But yeah, we'll get a little sidetracked there. But
but one more location that I'd like to mention was that battery that was built during the Second
that was
World
in Rhode
War.
Island.
In Rhode Island, yes, I know. But it goes back to what you were saying about the tagging and the responsible urban spelunking and everything.
Mm-hmm.
That place is just covered with paint.
Yeah.
Every inch of it.
Mm-hmm.
And most of it's not fit to walk around. They've got it cordoned off with metal railings now. Mm-hmm. Areas where you really shouldn't go through.
Yeah.
Because you could get trapped easily and possibly die.
Yeah.
And that has its own history, that place.
Yeah. But, like I said, we're sticking with upstate New York. And if we want to, there's missile silos up in the Adirondacks.
Oh, for sure.
Ghost towns. I mean, okay, let me go over some of the stuff that will probably be covered. Well, we definitely be calling hauntings.
Right.
A lot of the historical sites have hauntings. A lot of the historical inns and restaurants and public venues have hauntings, which is cool. And especially if they could especially if that haunting is tied into the history of the place. Uh-huh. There's 2 mansions we're going to talk about in the first season, and they both are haunted. But the ghosts aren't mean. They're not scary. They're the complete opposite. Right. If you run into them, you're almost like, oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Because the people who are behind these places definitely are not scary. Definitely not mean, and are very interesting people, both in a business sense and a personal sense. And I can't wait to talk about either of them. It's going to be kind of cool. I'm trying to build up interest here. And then we have abandoned places, ghost towns. There's a lot around it. Well, our first real
Happy
episode.
Valley.
Yes, it's going to be Happy Valley. If you're from Central New York, especially up around Syracuse area, you know what Happy Valley is. You know the stories around Happy Valley. But I tell you, that was one case where when I started looking at the history and what really happened, I think it's sadder than any of the urban legends bring them around.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's kind of mundane reason why the town isn't there anymore. But yet, when you look at the whole broader picture, it was like, oh, well, no wonder they had to leave. No wonder people are gone.
Well, it started out as hop farming.
Yeah, but let's save that for the episode.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Like I said, we've got a couple true crime. I've got true crimes in there, and the one we're going to cover this season really, really disturbed me.
I think that's one of the reasons why I mentioned the battery over in Rhode Island. I want to save the locations in New York for the program. Oh, another interesting thing about that is I found out that battery out in Rhode Island, the aforementioned one, I guess it was used something of a clearinghouse for German POWs that were being brought in to the country.
Well, that would tie in actually to some of the stuff that happened up around here. I know definitely in Wisconsin they had a lot of German POWs.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
But kind of ties into Fort Ontario because they were the only refugee center.
Yeah.
The only refugee center for the Holocaust in the United States.
Yeah, the only.
So, it all kind of ties in.
For Jewish people fleeing the Holocaust.
It all kind of ties in. But, we're covering some true crimes, some cryptids. Although I'm thinking now with the true crimes, but we're actually going to cover 2 true crimes. One's more, there's more time distance between now and when it happened, and the other one's fairly fresh. I mean, it happened in my lifetime. So I think the ones that happen closer to now are going to be a little harder to talk about because the victims' families are still around and people are around remembering that. I mean,
it may still be a cold case, especially in the case of murder. Yeah, there's no statute of limitations on felony assault and murder.
But the reason we're doing that more modern one is because how there are already legends and ghost tales in that area, in this particular little 5 square mile area.
Yeah.
That when this more modern thing happened, it got incorporated into the other stories. And then you got to sit there and start separating, well, which ghost and which legend goes to which event and which person. Because, like I said, within this 5 mile area, we've got 3 people who are famous or infamous.
Right. Depending on your opinion.
Yeah. And one of them, I would say, if there was a haunting, he has every reason to haunt.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but, road crew comes through and, oops, we found you. Another good example, there was one place we were going to cover because of the Revolutionary War and the war battle. There's a lot of battlefields up around this one particular battlefield. If it's not haunted, I'd be surprised.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, you're referring
to... I'm referring to
Oriskany.
And because they never found the bodies. Yeah. We don't know what happened to the bodies. And anyone who doesn't know anything about Oriskany, here's a little hook for you. When Benedict Arnold came up upon the site of the Battle of Oriskany, like a while later, I can't remember the exact time off the top of my head, the stench and the gore was so bad that it stuck with him for the rest of his life. It was horrendous.
They just let him rot where they fell?
What were you going to do? I mean, really, they had no time to go back and get the bodies.
Okay, let's not go too far.
No, but let's not. But
let's save it for the episode.
We'll save it for the episode, but if there's a place that if it's haunted, it's got good reason to be haunted.
Absolutely.
And it is... The park is a memorial park. I mean, the whole place is basically a sacred area. So, and we are going to cover some of those. Well, there's graveyards and sacred groves and things of that nature. Well, that's a hint one we're going to do.
Sacred grove. No Bohemian groves. That's another.
That's in California. That's in California.
Sacred groves. Yeah.
Sacred groves. And you also have to consider there's a bit of, I don't think we'll ever work this into our program, but this is also where we're living is what was called the burn-over district in the mid to late 1800s, which spawned a lot of belief systems, including Mormonism. And if you head out more to the western side of the state, spiritualism was very big. So that those will tie in. I think we're covering spiritualism. I don't know when. I've got a few interesting leads on that, but I don't know if we'll be covering Mormonism at all. But it's interesting that it started up around this area. It started in Palmyra, and you could still go and see sacred sites of the Mormon religion there. So, yeah, somebody says, well, upstate New York is interesting. Oh, come on. With missile silos in the Adirondacks, how much more interesting do you have to be?
I'd like to see that, honestly. I'd like to go visit one. And where are those golden tablets given to the
out near Palmyra.
Well, no. You see, they disappeared after he...
but it was found somewhere out that way.
He transposed all the information from the golden tablets he received from the angels onto.
But the location was in that area, basically.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. So.
But there are these mysterious golden tablets. They're no longer in existence.
But that's just. And then you got some amazing hoaxes up here. Amazing hoaxes. Okay, in Wisconsin, we grew up with the Ho Day. Now that's a fun hoax. Everybody has fun with it. In New York, you got a great hoax, and it's in Cooperstown.
But to illustrate how something like
sure, you step on my whole thing.
Oh, sorry.
I was building up.
Okay, sorry.
One of the biggest hoaxes.
Okay.
P.T. Barnum was involved, so you know how big this thing was. Is laying in a barn in Cooperstown, New York, in the Farmers Museum. Yes. I'm talking about the infamous Cardiff Giant.
Cardiff Giant, of course.
So, yes, there are plenty of hoaxes that we'll be covering, but my God, how much more interesting you have to get for that one.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that one won't be in our first series, first season, but... Yeah. So, well, the plan is for seasons, is we're going to do 10 episodes and then take 3 weeks off. We're going to do a weekly episode, so it'll be 10 weeks, 3 weeks off. And I kind of had to time them with my work because during the summer, my work gets crazy and I won't have time to do anything with this. I won't even have time to do research. So I have to have like that 3 weeks off there, and then we might as well just keep it up. Do 10 weeks of shows, 3 weeks off. So that means we're actually going to have 4 seasons in the first calendar year, doing it that way. But that's just to help us catch up with stuff. The nice thing about this podcast is we can record ahead on it because we're not doing current affairs. We're not doing...
Right, exactly.
I mean, there is one that we're doing for the first season. I've been kind of keeping an eye on because might be news to what's happening to that site. And I've been keeping an eye on it. And if things update with that, I will definitely do like an addendum at the end of the episode.
Sure.
But because things like that happen all the time. One of the mansions we're talking about, I started doing research and like literally like a week after I started doing research, there was a major development with it. But luckily I couldn't be able to include it. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, so there are a lot of ongoing legends that we're going to be exploring too.
Or things, people, businesses change hands.
Yeah.
One of the mansions we're covering, it's always been haunted, but it's interesting. The people that are running it now really are taking that under their wing. They're really using the haunting legends to get people interested in coming to the building because they're trying to save the building. And what a better way to save it.
They're trying to build interest in the area. Yeah, and what a better way, what people's appetite is like. Hey, we got a ghost story to tell you. Oh, by the way, did you know? Yeah. And that's what I love about it. So, that's pretty much what we're planning to do. Yes.
Yeah. The format's going to be a little different. We're just both BS and talking to each other. But I'm
just
definitely...
a soft introduction.
Yeah. So, and it went a lot longer than I thought. We're almost at 50 minutes.
All right. So, thank you for listening to our ghastly podcast.
Ghastly, that's for sure. And we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, absolutely. So and welcome to Unearthly Upstate.
Yep. Talk to you later. Unearthly Upstate is an animated lyre production. The show is produced by Mari and Matt Minette. Research and writing by Mari Minette. Music is by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license. Unless otherwise stated in the episode, the places mentioned in the broadcast have not paid or contracted us for any type of promotion. And check out our webpage for the full credit sources for the episode.